Welcome to the Proof Point Podcast, where we decode digital success one click at a time. We share key takeaways fueled by data and insights that your team can implement today to drive growth. Now, let's get started.
This is Stacey Porter-Bilger, your host for the Proof Point Podcast, where we feature B2B and D2C businesses and thought leaders sharing marketing, data tactics, sales strategies, and leadership insights that kickstart your growth in the rapidly changing digital space. This episode is brought to you by Proof Digital. Proof Digital is a strategic and creative performance marketing agency. We partner with companies to create data-fueled marketing, sales funnels, and overall growth strategies. Visit proofdigital.com to learn more. Before I get started, I really want to thank Highmark TechSystems. Highmark is a highly valued partner of ours, and it's the reason I have the guest on today. Highmark is a leader in providing modular, multi-level decks, architecture, wall systems for temporary exhibits and buildings. Proudly made in the United States, actually located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Be sure to check them out at highmarktech.com. The structure, they really are the structure behind the world's best events. Today's guest is Brian Baker. Brian is the vice president of Highmark TechSystems. He really is the creative leader and the Swiss Army knife, as they often say, behind all their creative ideas and innovations at Highmark. He's been working in the various fields around this space for 25 years. He's had leadership roles as a designer, a strategist, and an innovator. He has worked with large brands like Coca-Cola, Home Depot, FedEx, State Farm, and more, along with small boutique brands and agencies. And I look forward to having a conversation. So thanks for joining me, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Stacey.
No, I really appreciate it. You know, one of the questions I really do like everybody wants to know people's journey. So tell me about your professional journey as a creative guy.
Well, yeah. So everybody thinks their own journey's really interesting. I think mine kind of is, but I think one of the things that I didn't expect to help me as much as it did through my career was my original career choice was I was going to be a rock star. And I was in a band, played 5 years, put myself basically through college doing that. I was studying industrial design. I started out at Center for Creative Studies in Detroit. I was going to be a car designer, and then I transferred to Purdue and got a industrial design degree from there. I never intended to use my design degree though. It was I was pragmatic enough to know I needed a backup plan, and I really did and do love design. To me it's music is another. They're all creative outlets, right? I love to cook, and I like the 10 bar. Kind of any way that I can, create or synthesize, or I like to do that. And one of the things that I didn't expect when I was screwing off playing music was how much so many things from that experience would actually really help me in my career after that as a creative and as a designer. You don't really get nervous, presenting to a room of 10 people when you've been on stage in front of a couple thousand. Actually, I will say this: the worst onstage experience. It was in the town you're in. We played a bar, and it was an off night. I don't remember what, because sometimes you get like earlier in the week gigs or whatever. It was like a Wednesday night or something, and there were like maybe 5 people in this place. There was nobody there. And that's weird because you really see the people's faces. That's actually way more intimidating than the biggest shows we probably played were around a couple thousand. That's way easier because the energy's there and everything. They bring it. You don't have to. But you learn to read a room, especially when there's 5 people, right? Like they're not digging on this at all. Let's shift the set list a little bit differently. And as a creative, in presentations, I'm constantly observing like that. I'm observing my teammates, what they're doing and how it's going over. I'm observing the audience. And even as I'm speaking, if you're on stage singing and playing guitar and reading the room, you learn, you kind of train yourself after hundreds of shows to be able to do those things simultaneously. So as you're presenting and thinking about what you're saying and trying to sound smart and get the narrative across to hopefully win this sale, you're also able to read the room and see, are they reacting well to this? They really responded to that, or they seemed concerned about that. So, those things I was trained on. I didn't even realize that I was being trained for what I've done a lot in my career. And I do a lot of presenting. I do a lot of that, as well as, I teach a class for our industry that's part of the accreditation process. So for CTSM, which is Certified Trade Show Marketer. So, I'm giving you the long story.
Sure, no, absolutely.
But, a lot of what was really have been really things that have been important to me in my career were formed there, and I didn't even realize it yet. And then, so after that, my first job out at once the band started to fizzle, the guitar player, to be honest, I got married and had a family, and I was starting to think,
so you had to make money.
Got to make some money. Also, my hair fell out, and so this was before Daughtry, yeah. So anyway,
that's right.
So at that point, I was thinking, all right, it's time to be a grown up, and I was actually kind of working as a designer and still playing shows, but that ended, and so my first job was I was designing boats, and it was a small company in Indiana that did boat interiors, and I really liked the kind of thing I was designing, but I didn't really enjoy a lot about that work experience. I was there a year, and someone gave me the advice, if you wanted to, I was looking to maybe go and work for an industrial design like consultancy, but they said, listen, go find a job in the trade show and exhibit industry, do a couple years in that. It's great training for lots of reasons. And he was telling me the reasons that were great training for industrial design consultancy work. And so that was kind of my plan. I'm like, well, there's actually there's a small exhibit house in my hometown of Fort Wayne, Icon Exhibits. So, and I had done some little bit of freelance rendering and stuff for them. So I actually, I applied there. I ended up getting hired, and I was there for 5 years and really grew a ton. And what I didn't expect was, doing my short tour through it to get a good background, was that I would fall in love with it. And, as a designer, designing cars or objects or whatever, it's this thing, and I can rotate that around pretty easily in my head. I can think of it in different angles and draw it and understand it. In an environment, it's completely different from the outside, from the inside, from every angle you're at, different heights. I mean, it just changes almost infinitely. So the way you experience it is way more complex, and designing it and anticipating that was just I can't even tell you. It was exponentially more challenging than to design an object. And although I love both, I felt like, and I still do feel like there's a ton I can learn, even just pure design. And then from there, as a designer, you begin to, it's not just about a structure or a shape or a color, or proportions and things like that. We're now learning about what is this brand trying to say? What are their goals? Who's their audience, and how do they want to affect them, right? So you start to learn more strategic thinking. And so, that's the way my career was going. I really wanted to stay at Icon for a long time, but I had an opportunity. My wife had an opportunity to move close to family and work for her dad here in Atlanta. And we tried to work something out with Icon and didn't. So I ended up going to work for a pretty large company in our industry, MC Squared. And I was there for 17 years.
Wow.
And as a designer and then creative director, and, really, really got more involved in strategy, and again, what I was just referring to a minute ago, the idea of it's not just about the design. And by the way, we use the word strategy all the time. I use it a lot.
Yes.
I overuse it, I'm sure, but there's different layers of it, right? Like, for example, we start at the end. That's the thing, right? And I honestly, everything that we do, even if it's a small project, I always still start at the end. That at the end of this whole thing, when it's done, what did we want to achieve? Forget if we can, or what the budget is, or whatever. What's the ultimate? If people could, who's the audience? How are we going to affect them? What do we want them to think, feel, do, or say? or all the above as a result of this experience that they're going to come to. So you go there and you figure out, okay, well, here's what we want. Here's what we want. We want to change their mind, or we want to expose them to something they don't know about, or whatever. So you go backwards from there. And from there, you go to what kind of experiences do we need to have in that space to support that strategy? And then, so there's this iterative ideation from that, just like there is the strategic part.
Sure.
And once you have those things in place and you feel really confident about those, then it's a matter of, okay, now what structure will support those experiences, and everything needs to point to and align with that strategy. And that was a process that, it's actually pretty close to what people refer to as design thinking now. But that process I went through for a long time and honed it. And I never have given up design, where a lot of guys who become more creative directors, become more involved in strategy, they tend to just, pull levers. And I certainly have had teams where we're assigning work, and that's part of it. But I've also never wanted to give up completely the role as a designer, because I think I've seen too many of my friends as they age, where they kind of willingly do that, and we run the risk of becoming kind of irrelevant. We lose our chops. We don't know what's cool anymore. And I've always been afraid of that. And so I still to this day, I still do a lot of our design work myself. By the way, I want to say one thing at the beginning when you introduced me. You said all the cool creative ideas come from me. That's absolutely not true.
Okay. I don't give you credit for a lot of it.
Well, I mean, that's the hat I wear. I'm responsible for it. But I will say this: one of the most important things about a creative leader is to recognize the ideas that are good, or sometimes the idea that you've been told to do, and figure out how to make it as best as possible. But recognizing those good ideas, and I've had discussions with this, about arguments even about this with other creatives. Good ideas can come from anywhere. I mean, good creative ideas can come from anywhere. And I've always enjoyed, meetings where there's people in there that have nothing to do with this thing that we're designing or any experience in it, but almost always they're going to have an observation that we didn't expect.
Right. You get too close to it.
Yes. And which I don't know why I'm going to say this, but I do now, but I wasn't planning on it. So one of the things that I learned my very first probably 8 weeks in college at Center for Creative Studies was they were trying to define what creativity is and where it comes from. And the instructor, he had this, I'm going to grab my computer mouse. It's not what it was, but he had an object and he was holding it. And he said, can you all, describe what you see from this angle? And he had us all over here. I want you all to describe what you see. And it was kind of a cube thing. And he was holding it, and we were all describing the same thing. He said, I want you to sketch it. And then he had one person come over and stand off to the side, and he had them do the same thing. And he had another person come behind him. And so then he had them show what they had. And when he turned it around, it was completely different on those other sides. So he talked about the idea of creativity, that like his simplest definition of it was the ability to see the same thing, an object, a problem, whatever it is, from a different angle. And that was a really great visual example of that. So I've always tried to okay, everybody's going here. How do I get around this a different way to see it differently? And, a lot of times that's automatic if somebody is not, if they don't do that every day, if they work on the shop floor and, something they see is different than so they might bring a different thought, and that happens a lot. But I do want to make sure that specifically when we talk about, and by the way, I'm super proud of a lot of the creative that Highmark does. And, some of that is actually even external, like partners, like we've had great partners bring great ideas to us. Debbie and Matt, Debbie is the president, Matt's our senior vice president. They also wear a ton of hats, and I mean, as you have to, but they're both, Debbie would tell you she's not creative. She is.
I've seen her in action.
She's got great ideas.
She does.
Super positive, and that really, helps facilitate and encourage that. Matt has a technical graphics degree from Purdue. So, his background. I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, his background is basically illustration and stuff. It's a little more on the technical side. So he downplays his creativity, but, there are a lot of times that we'll start a meeting and they'll say, hey, we were thinking about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And we go from there. So a lot of the great ideas don't start in here from me. They're, I might take it and run with it. And then on top of that, I've got great people that help me execute as well. My daughter's actually on our creative team now.
I know. I've seen her work, man.
Yeah,
I want to hire her. She's a rock star.
It's humbling because, I'm the old warhorse that's been doing this forever. And then I see her do some stuff where I'm like, that's better than what I would do. And, even we've had, I don't think you've met Elijah yet. He's still in school. He's done 2 projects for us. He's in the middle of working on one right now. He did the EMS, a lot of the EMS video work you saw. He did that.
Oh, he did that. He did a great job.
Yeah. And it's just like the drone shots and stuff. And but they're really creative. And like I said, I'm proud of them, but it's really humbling because I want to be the man. And I can see that they're better at some things than I am. And that's definitely humbling, but yeah,
serving them well.
The team, like I said, the leadership within the company, we kind of tag team and, we get our heads together and brainstorm on things. And I certainly do bring some ideas, but, the team does as well. And we have a really great energy where we tend to build it. My favorite type of brainstorming meeting is when you're done, you've got this great idea and you can't actually put your finger on whose it was or where it came from. It's like, it came out of the group. The idea, there's a German word, Gestalt, I think, that where the sum is more than sum is more, what is it? The whole is more than the sum of the parts.
Yes, absolutely. You got it.
So, and that really does happen. And honestly, it's one of the things I go back to playing in a band. The stuff that would come out of that creatively versus me sitting with a guitar or a piano trying to write a song. I enjoy that process so much more.
But the truth around the creativity piece, I mean, I started off of the rapidly changing digital space and we're, AI and all those type of things. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you one thing that will not go away. I mean, it's not even creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, and looking at things from different perspective and reading the room, like you talked about with the band, these technologies cannot do it. And so from a standpoint of your daughter or anybody else, if you have a creative bent, you have an advantage. I truly believe that. So I love that discussion that you had, and we can build on it more. But I just wanted to state that because creativity is the way of everything else might be taken care of, but creative skill sets are here to stay, and that's not going to change no matter what digital tool you have out there.
And there's some pretty deep philosophical, and we could even get into religious discussions around that. But, one of the other things that I would say, and by the way, I am fascinated with that, like the idea of, I'm not going to turn this into a preaching podcast, but I've always been fascinated with the idea of how simple anything I design is and how complex the world is and how amazing that design is. But, and I take a lot of inspiration from that as a creative. But the other thing I really wanted to say about when I look at where ideas come from and you execute a great project or whatever. And look, I'm not going to lie. There have been some times in my career where I fought for an idea that nobody else liked. And we, as the creative leader, I said, hey, listen, I believe in this. We're going for it. And there have been times that crashed and burned.
Well, yeah, but you have to take risks.
And there have been times that I had people coming up to me afterwards going, oh my gosh, I'm glad you pushed this. That was amazing. And that feels awesome, but I honestly, I think I prefer the thing that comes together as a team. I just like it better, as opposed to, I just like the process better. It's way more fun than
right
battling. But what I was going to say about this, leadership in the company, the rest of my team, all of that, and even like I said, one of the recent things we've done, Experiential Marketing Summit. There's a lot of back and forth with us and the staff there at Event Marketer. And, we have a great relationship with them. So you're looking at it from that perspective, but also, our parallel partners, so other suppliers in our industry that we work with and get along well with our company friends, whatever you would want to say. And then honestly, the role that I'm in now is at being at a supplier partner, the most important part of all of this, and this is kind of where I was trying to build to, are those relationships that we have with with our clients to help them support with, because we don't sell to end brands. I spent most of my career doing that, as you mentioned some of those brands at the beginning.
Right.
But if I were to really think about what my bio should say, I'd probably start listing 50 or 100 different agencies that I've partnered with on stuff that I've worked with. And, that's really satisfying too, seeing that, okay, we have these solutions and we're going to help you and we're going to, do a great job. And then they take something, great out into the world. And I think my favorite thing about all of that stuff, when you have, it's cool to have a creative idea that makes you feel good, but when you see an idea come from something that you're involved in that you didn't expect, that was just really cool, that was, again, this my favorite thing is something that you didn't anticipate, you didn't expect, and it didn't expect, and while there it is, and that's cool, and I didn't see that coming. And my favorite compliment I can ever give anybody, whether it's a song, whether it's a design or whatever, is I wish I would have thought of that. And and there's a lot of examples of that. And I get excited about when other designers could do something really cool, whether it's an architecture or whether it's an art, whether it's in the space that we're in.
Yeah, a couple of things. What I want to hit on that. I also want to show and highlight some of this amazing work and products in which you all have. But I definitely admire, I mean, you were talking about the importance of partnership. I value our partnership, and it's been a great partnership from our standpoint. But from the outside looking in, I loved to see all the partnerships that you have with the companies in which who are your clients, who you serve, your experiential marketing agencies who you work with. It's through, from start to finish of product. And if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up a couple examples of some of these these examples of work and partners in which you've built to help them elevate their brand. This is obviously a beautiful structure in which you are behind, but look at how many different variations that you are partnering with these agencies or companies just to take their company and their brand to a whole nother level.
Yeah. And it's about, the thing that's unique about events, trade show exhibits, those kinds of things. And there's a number of them, even museums, somewhat, but the ones that are the most interesting are, first of all, it's an environment that you're experiencing, right? But when you look at, these experiences, the most valuable part are the face-to-face interactions.
Yes.
And
yes.
Right. So, but that's a brand touch point. That's, in my opinion, is the most important touch point of all of them. It's the reason we do these things, as opposed to, you can go online and learn all kinds of stuff. You can do a Zoom call and have some interaction, but when you're standing there, you're shaking hands, you're right. That's part of the reason that COVID hurt so much for everybody, is because we couldn't get together. Right.
No. Yeah.
And listen, we need that. We're wired that way. Psychologically, we need, even scientifically, we are. You talk about the far infrared you get from a hug or whatever, and how it affects you physically and in your health. So, face-to-face, person-to-person interactions are super important. And for marketing, as well as, like I said, there's a whole other discussion, but, obviously I'm not going to try to,
but no, there's no question. If we understand each other, we get into and that's the same with customers too. You're going to have conversations that you wouldn't have had if you were just sitting across the table from them, and you learn something, and then you can learn how you can, as you partner with them, get some insights and think, okay, here's another idea that can help elevate your brand, because I didn't know that before.
Well, so when you were showing those structures, so you know a bit about us, but for those out there in podcast land, that I started to refer to brand touch points, and that the pinnacle of that is that face-to-face. But if there's a lot of ways to facilitate that, and any experience that somebody has with your brand. And so there's different directions of this, right? There's like, if you're an agency and you're working with a brand, there's a brand experience happening right here, right between these
Yes.
two. And, that agency, that team has a brand. Are they fun to work with? Are they a pain in the ass to work with? Are they creative? Are they not? Are they good at what they do? And then how do they execute it? Is it a painful process? Is it easy? What's the work like? So and how did it turn out? Right. So like, oh, we were in the structure and it leaked and it was, it didn't look good. And you could tell it was, kind of wonky versus, wow, they brought us a beautiful experience and it was tight and clean. And so there's that brand touch point. But then when you look at the end, the audience that's now perceiving what the brand brought to that experience. So that face-to-face is most important, but everything around it that facilitates it, it influences the perception of it, right? So if I'm at an experience and, so there's things we can't hit, we can't do anything about, right? Like if the weather's bad, if it's, if there's a bunch of mosquitoes or you're near us, the venue is near something that smells. Those are things but all of these meters in your head are going to affect the way you look back at that experience, right? Like if you've ever done something and you were sick that day, right? Might have been a really cool thing, but you don't look back at it as a great experience because you were sick. And if you're at an event and, there's all of these things, I like to picture them as big dials and there's positives and negatives and in between. I want them all turned positive. And we can affect quite a number of them. So those brand touch points of what's the structure look like? What's it feel like? Oh, how does it sound if it's raining, right? Is it and it's flapping around or is it like hey, I feel like I'm specifically to our structures, I'm in a building. This is secure and safe. And it's, so, are we going to climate control it because maybe it's hot or, are you undercover because maybe it's raining? So some of those things that we might think we can't control, maybe we can. And if it's a hot, miserable day and they step inside my experience and it's climate controlled and nice in there, what did I just do? I mean, I took that where they weren't even thinking about the weather and they turned, now I got a huge positive out of that. But all those details, and that everything that we can, these are all parts of a branded experience. And we attribute our perception and look, there's all kinds, there's books and tons of stuff on branding and how people,
there is.
And how people, the lizard part of your brain is what really attached to a brand. And
this color versus that color.
All of these things are things that we build up. And if we're going to go do a brand, if we're going to do an activation, if we're going to be at a trade show, if we're going to do a conference, whatever, and we're interacting, they could be our own internal employees, right? At a sales meeting or something. And we have the ability to have them feeling really good about the company they work for, or we have the ability for them to walk away disappointed, pissed off, irritated. Maybe I should get my resume right. All of these, so it's not always even. The audience can be our own selves, right? So, but all of those things impact it, and some things are really easy to affect the number on that dial. And one of those is just, I would say the partnerships you choose, the kind of work that they do, the solutions and the products that they bring. I'll toot your horn for you for a second. As you said, Stacy, we're a client of yours, and we moved our business over to you guys because we were working with you on the Your Space side, and we really liked the way that you worked. One of my favorite things about you guys is that you'll bring things to us and say, hey, we were thinking about this and we noticed this and you can do this, or hey, here's a cool idea for this. They just showed us some new images. Hey, Jane's been playing with AI. What do you think about these images? And I'm like, well, these are awesome. We gotta change this stuff because it's not what we make right here, but we can. So, and we literally just had a meeting yesterday on that. But I love the way that, because it means so much to me the way that we behave. One of the reasons I came to Highmark is that, if you put your clients' needs, obviously you got to make money, right? I mean, we're all in business. It comes
back to you.
Right. But if you put your clients' needs and what's going to work for them above what's going to work for me right here in this, I think that's, and not only putting their needs ahead of yours, but also thinking there's this idea that you become, we talked about branding a minute ago. There's a point you go from, I like this brand, I'm going to buy that brand. And then gosh, I'm dancing around religion all over the place, but
that's okay.
Where you believe in something enough where you become an evangelist for it, and you start to share that with other people, and you start to say, hey, well, I know these guys that do this over here, and you really should talk to them. And you start to think, like, hey, and you have a relationship with us, and I have, we've got other, like I said, parallel partners. I'll go to them sometimes and say, hey, I was thinking about the way you guys do this, and have you ever thought about this? And there's the relationship that you have where you're literally thinking about someone's brand and the business that they're doing, and maybe a way that they might be able to, an idea that you have that they could benefit from. That's a different way to work than somebody whose primary goal is, what are we invoicing? How do we increase that?
Right.
And there are plenty of businesses that work that way. I think long term, the ones and that's what I love about your company, is that you guys think that way. You bring ideas to us, and you give a bleep, right?
We do. We fall in love with we fall in love with our clients in their products and services. And when you do that, you think of them when they don't even know you're thinking of them. It's the same thing that you do for your clients. I mean, the importance of partnership, we've talked about it on multiple things. And that's where, again, the magic happens, because you go that extra mile, you learn that extra thing, and then, and then you enjoy working with them too. It makes a heck of a lot better when you're like enjoying working with, who you spend time with. It's a lot easier to elevate a brand like Highmark TechSystems when you know what kind of people are in the building, as well as what kind of product and service they deliver. So that's just good stuff.
Yeah, agreed. And it's, it goes both ways, right? Whether they're your client or whether they're your supplier partner.
Yeah.
I hate the word vendor.
But can we shift gears for 1 second? I want to highlight, because I use this example internally about what you guys did at the EMS Experiential Marketing Summit.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, as you'll see, I'm going to share your landing page on this.
I know what you're about to say.
Rocked it out of the park, right?
Yeah.
And I see this is your rock and roll days coming back to life.
But we had a lot of fun with this.
I mean, you really, I don't, how long did you start thinking through the whole process? I mean, this is your structure. I'll probably attach this too. You can see a little bit of, just the whole, just the whole visual of how you probably, like, everybody was coming over and checking you out, right?
Yes, for sure. Well, part of that's automatic because we've got the biggest space at the Experiential Marketing Summit. We actually, we partner with the show, and we're actually one of the official venue or presentation environments.
Yeah.
So we're right in the middle. They actually brought us that idea in 2017.
Okay.
To when they knew we were going to be launching our outdoor stuff, and said, hey, what do you think about? And they called it the Highmark Hub, and they were going to put programming in there. It's a great example of, so, they're an industry publication, but we're also a client, right?
Right.
We could call them a vendor. They're not, they're a partner. And literally they spend time thinking about our business and, things that we should be thinking about. And because the space that they specialize in is a little bit different than our traditional historical core business, which is more the trade show side, where this is more about, experiential agencies. But yeah, so if I gave you the history, you asked a couple questions about where this came from. So I'll pull back the curtain. In the back of my mind, it's been running frantically where the idea came from to go rock here. And if Debbie was here, she'd kick me and she would tell me and remind me. I'd be, oh yeah. I'm thinking it might have come from EMS. It might have been them that mentioned this to us. So I'm going to dial back a couple of years earlier. When we came out of the pandemic, we had always done some cool stuff, but it was really around our brand at EMS. And coming out of the pandemic, they told us that since there were no shows for a while, 2021 was the first one where we came back, and it was in Chicago. It was really sparsely attended. It was, but God bless them for actually, doing it again and saying, listen, we got to make these things happen. And so they said they were thinking about the idea of, they were looking at this as like a family reunion. And our light bulbs all went off and said, oh, can we grab onto that? What you guys are talking about, and just, I want to lean into that. We're going to make that our theme. And they're like, yeah, great. So we actually did a whole booth around all the graphics. I designed a family reunion t-shirt, right? Because you got to have that at a family reunion. I dug in, I decided I had to have the perfect family reunion playlist. So by the way, and there was, and some really cool stuff, but there was also like, there's some of the cheesy tip stuff that you have to have it. They play Celebrate by Kool and the Gang at every family reunion. And we had a bunch of like awkward family photos on the graphics and screens and stuff. Pretty minimal structure, but people loved it. And so but it was really sparse attendance wise. So the next year we re-racked the family reunion. It did it a little bit differently, but we used some of the same theming. So in 2020, and so I guess we were getting this kind of, people were really looking at what are they going to do next? Because that was, they were starting to notice the experience as much as they were our structures, which is actually a challenge because they're like, well, what do you guys do? I'm like, well, you're standing in it and on it and around it. We make all this stuff, the structures. Yeah. So 23, they told us they were going to do an 80s theme. So we're like, oh yeah, we're in on this. So I went hardcore. It was a mixture of video games. Like I turned our logo into the Pac-Man. I used
Pac-Man. Okay, that's my brain was going right there.
I did
Centipede and all those
8-bit graphics and just Miami Vice kind of stuff. And we even had like magenta carpet. It wasn't supposed to be, but the truck driver got arrested in like Oklahoma or something. Didn't make it to Vegas. So our awesome supplier partner that does the carpet, Brewmark, they said, listen, here's what we've got that we can pick from, this here in Vegas, because that's one of the things that makes a great partner is stuff goes wrong. How do you fix it? And they were able to turn it around fast, print some stuff locally. And so shout out to them. They always do a great job for us and with us. But so we had this 80s theme and people really loved it. We had break dancers. In fact, there's some clips of that on our feeds as well. But it went over so well that and by the way, I'm scared to death of 2025 because of where I'm going with this, because a lot of people are like, what are you going to do next year? That was awesome. And by the way, we brought in an AV partner that I'd done a lot of pitches with in the past. And Stam Media, they did a full LED wall for us, all kinds of great sound, and just really amped that up to a whole different level. So what we did in 23 was kind of over the top, and it was it was very 80s. And by the way, the 80s playlist is one of my. So
you have to send that to me. By the way, I want the 80s playlist, and I can maybe even add it to our site. I would like to.
Yeah, I'll send you a few. And in fact, the 80s, I had 3 different ones. I had the general 80s theme, but we had a dance party both nights at the end of the night.
Right.
Debbie's idea. I want to have an 80s dance party. I'm like, that's awesome. We're totally doing that. And then we're like, and I want break dancers. So I won't tell you the whole story of how we got the break dancers there, but that was fun too. So anyway, so I had a break dance playlist also. So and back in the day, when I was about 15, 16, I used to do a little bit of that break dancing. So see, I got this whole, I've got dad lore. My son told me, Dad, your dad lore is like off the charts. So anyway, I was a break dancer and a DJ. So I wasn't very good.
I want to see this. I
was a better DJ than I was break dancer. But so anyway, so that went really well. And then, so we were thinking, we really want to promote the premium nature of our structures, so we're trying to tie that back in this year. And we were going with the theme we were kind of calling it, actually was one of the guys at EMS told us that's what the name of this architecture was New West. And it was like this if you're in Aspen or, I'm not one of the cool skiing guys that goes out there all the time, but trying to think of a couple of the places he mentioned, but where there's these really high-end ski resorts, really nice, residential architecture, and it's light woods and blacks and crisp whites. And I was down the road on that, and we had a call with, I'm pretty sure it was with EMS, and I don't remember if they told us they were going more rock or something, how it just came up. But afterwards, we decided, I think we need to change the theme. We need to go with a rock and roll theme. And I spent 2 or 3 days over the weekend. I came back to Matt and Debbie on Tuesday and said, I don't have it. I just, there's not. And I was too complicated, right? The way I was trying to tie this together in my head. And Debbie starts to, I think we can make it work. And she was kind of going, and a couple of things she said just triggered in me.
Yeah.
This doesn't need to be that complicated. And it was actually a graphic that I had used in the 80s theme, because there was some hair metal 80s stuff in that whole thing too. Okay. It wasn't just, a new wave. And there was one that I did where we combined a bunch of different bands, fonts and logos and stuff. And it said Event Structures That Rock. And I said, let's just, what do you and she's like, yep, let's do that. So from there, but the goal still was that we needed to show the premium nature of what we did. So it wasn't, and I didn't want to some of our graphics, like the main theme graphics definitely were a nod to a late 80s, my daughter did that. She hand painted that album cover, as we called it. And I said, I want to do an album cover that's every cliche, like all the main cliches we could think of. The only thing we didn't have were guns or something on there, but we had a skull with a rose in its mouth, and you had dark water underneath with flames coming out of it, and you had blackbirds in the sky, and it was a lot of fun. And
it's all the details of the wallpaper kind of thing too.
So that was the other thing too. From the outside, there was this, and we even had a CBGB style, graphic treatment over on the one side on the closet and stuff with band posters, real gritty. So we wanted that on the outside, but when you came in, this idea, and we didn't want it to be one genre, right? And the playlist and the stuff that we did and the band photos, they went from, like Elvis and the Doors, not a lot on the Elvis tip because it wasn't so much rockabilly, but the Doors, of course, stuff you would expect, Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith. Guns N' Roses, yeah. But we had a lot of 90s stuff in there, Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and, Nirvana and that kind of stuff. And there were a few songs in there that even just a few years old. I had some Fall Out Boy in there and a couple of things from the last couple of years. I wanted to arrange, but they all needed to feel like genuine ass kicking rock and roll. And it did. When you're in the, and it did. when you're in the inside, the damask wallpaper and switched to velvet couches, and Debbie's idea for the crystal chandeliers hanging there and the zebra skin. The idea was if you were in Steven Tyler's house or Lenny Kravitz's house,
this is what it would look like. It would
more
totally
money
look
than
like
you knew
that.
what to do with, and kind of outrageous taste, and you were rich, but you were rock and roll royalty. What would that feel like? So that's kind of what we did with the inside. And there were some fun details. I got the idea to cover the beam covers with red alligator skin, faux leather. And that was a lot of fun. And that, some of those details just really it kind of gave it the authenticity of what it really was rock and roll. And, it was kind of built, that's my core of the kind of music that I love. As well as Matt and Debbie, and there was everything in there from the Cult to to the Doors and Metallica, and there were some rock songs that I don't love but fit, right? So but it was a lot of fun. And then we produced obviously a lot of the content that were on the screens. We had rolling videos and obviously stills, but
amazing.
My daughter produced a couple of intro commercials because for some of the sessions, we don't do a long one because that's annoying, right? But we do a 15 to 30 second introduction. So we had a couple of really, really short commercials, and then Matt would stand up and just talk about us for, another 15 or 30 seconds. But the commercials that we did, again, same thing. And we had fun with the social media leading up to it. We had my favorite video of all those was the one that my daughter came to me with, and it was, started out with the 80s theme. It was Come On Eileen, and it showed the stuff from last year and the break dancers. and then you get the needle, scratch, and the Beastie Boys kick in, and and it says, oh, we're ready to rock. And so it was just, I had so much fun with it.
Right.
It's definitely top 5 all time for me, as far as like, but as far as, things that I enjoy doing creatively. But that whole thing came together really fast. It was late in the game. We were down another path. And then we kind of decided to change direction. It was a lot of props from Amazon.
Right.
But yeah, it was really cool. And Court was our I'm sorry. They did a fantastic job. So yeah, we really had great, again, Exploring Graphics and Brewmark supplied that stuff for us, and worked with us, and they just did a fantastic, job supporting us. And, anyway, but yeah, you can't pull something off like that by yourself. You need a great internal team, and you need great external partners. And again, Stam Media, gosh, I'd be an idiot if I didn't mention what they brought so much to it. One of my favorite things about them is like these, hey, we thought of this that you didn't ask for. What do you think? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So, again, like I said, you guys do that. I try to do that in projects that I work on.
Right.
And I think it's a mark of a really great agency or supplier when they're thinking ahead like that. And, whether you want to call it plussing it or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, this idea of bringing more than what was asked for.
And the project, even though it came together fast and everybody brought their their ideas, and you had different partners who kind of, like you just mentioned a few, that kind of elevated the whole game. But there was at every level, the creativity part, obviously the structure part, but the plan of the people part when you're there, right? And and the offline too. I mean, from our standpoint, we were understand the behavior of your website. There was some geofencing going on there. So there was every detail off at the location and away from the location, just to make sure
project management going into it, arranging the shipping, the setup.
All
so
that.
yeah, and the guys internally that handle all that, because we threw a lot at him at the last minute. Matt Andrews did he was the captain of the ship on all that stuff on the operations wise, as he is for us in general. But he's also like the main lead on site, leading all the lead guys, for setup. Right. And so and not only that, he had great creative ideas as well. He was even texting me, hey, make sure we have this song on a playlist or whatever. So it was a team effort there. And, like I said, I mean, he is such a badass on a show site too. And again, he's somebody who cares about, whether it's ours or whether it's a client's or whatever it is. So that's what makes it so much fun to pull these off and see, a whole team, really all the, everything hitting on all cylinders.
Well, I mean, it's a great case study for anybody. It's on Highmark TechSystems website. If you really want to see how you do it right at an event, that is a pure case study. Well, before we kind of end this, I really appreciate your time. But and this is a proof point podcast. Is there any one or two thoughts that you have of making sure that we hit home for those listening?
Yes, I'd like to discuss the election. But I do think those things are important. And, I guess the other side of that is, and I mentioned it before, nobody's a perfect person. Nobody's a perfect company. And, I think one of the things that's really important is, companies are all made up of humans, right?
Yeah.
And until we're all AI, and there are times we get great stuff out of that. So there are times that there are struggles. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that our partners that we work with, like I mentioned, a truck not showing up or whatever, it's how do you react? What do you do? But again, if you really are partnering on, it's a two-way street, right? Because they need to also think about what's good for you. And seeking out those relationships, I think, is really important. And those are the ones that are the most satisfying. And again, I think it goes back to this, we're built to interact with each other on a psychological, social, spiritual level, but also and I think that's what makes, doing business that way more satisfying. But I guess the big thing for me is that just in my own mind through this, and it kicked off when you gave me too much credit for our creative, is that I really do really love the team that we have. And I mean, I guess I get to be the face of creativity for us, but I mean, I'm a part of it for sure, and I love that. But whether it's our leadership or whether it's the other the creative team intern, like like I said, we're a pretty small creative team. It's me and my daughter, but as far as that are responsible for it officially. But there's a lot of ideas and a lot of other things that come into it. They're from all over the rest of our company and our leadership, and again, those partnerships. I don't think I emphasized nearly enough when we talked about that EMS case study, if you will. Really, the partnership with Event Marketer and Experiential Marketing Summit. The Event Marketer puts on the show for Experiential Marketing Summit, and their team. I could mention a bunch of them, but I don't want to do that because I leave somebody out, and then they don't care anyway. But they do a fantastic job of that and bringing ideas to us and making sure that if our space works better, the show is going to be better, right? If the show's better, our space is going to work better, and it's better for actually even our competitors that are on the show floor. If that show floor is more vibrant, if it's better, if we bring that, I'm a firm believer in the phrase or the cliche that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think I butchered the exact wording of that, but I really do believe that. And so, like I said, EMS, Event Marketer, especially Jessica and Dan, they do such a fantastic job with us, and we really do. We wouldn't be nearly as successful there without them, and hopefully, and I think they do feel like that show is actually. I would toot our horn and say that if without the hub there that we're doing, it would be pretty different and it wouldn't be nearly as strong. And I'm proud of the fact of what we bring to that conference, and we'd help to elevate it. Not only figuratively, but also by bringing double decks and
double decks. Absolutely. Throw that in there. It's important. We'll make sure we'll give a shout out to them because that is such an amazing case story on how to elevate your business. And the truth is Highmark is a best in class when it comes to elevating brands. And so check Highmark out, highmarktech.com. We've been talking to Brian Baker with Highmark TechSystems. Brian, thank you for joining our podcast.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
That's good. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Proof Point Podcast. We'll see you again next time. And be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.